right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Los Angeles. Welcome to LAFB Live. I'm your co-host, Ryan Dyer, joined by Go Get Julio, ! Also known as Stephen Haglin. Missed you, man. Missed you last week. What's up, dude? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I had a great time celebrating my wife's birthday last weekend in Universal Studios, which is why I was not here.
Yeah.
Super fun just getting back to some sense of normalcy and going to a place that wasn't a restaurant with other people. It was really nice.
Dude, yeah. How was it? Every time I've talked to you, so we've been doing this now for 6 weeks, you've gotten because you've gotten a little ahead of us, even though you were now down in LA, but like you went to the movie theaters first before us. And how is it going to like a theme park?
It was fun. We had hit them the same weekend that they increased their capacity. So it was a little more crowded than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
But we hadn't been to Universal Studios since, like the first month or so that Harry Potter opened down there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just like, because we're Disneyland people. So we don't really ever go there. And a lot of the stuff was still kind of closed. All like the little snack carts were all closed. Some of the restaurants were closed.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of rides that were closed. So everything was like, after like noon, everything was about a 2-hour wait, which kind of sucked. But, because they have to socially distance on the rides. And so like on the Jurassic World, the water ride, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have 6 rows, but to socially distance, they have every other row blocked. So every ride takes a little bit longer just because of that. But It was still a lot of fun, man. It was a great time.
That's cool, dude. Yeah. No, I can't wait to get to Disneyland. I feel like it's gonna be sold out for like a year and a half, but because it's like 15% full. But apparently by June 15th, it's gonna be, I don't know, full capacity, but a lot closer.
Yeah, we were hoping to make a trip down before it got back to close to full capacity, but tickets were like sold out, and with our schedules, it just didn't really work out. So we're gonna go in the summer sometime, but I'm hoping that it's not 100% full capacity by then.
I know. I hope not, because it's just then it's better for us if it's not full, because it's stuff faster. So let me know if you come down. We'll make it happen. We'll do a little LAFB thing or something, or just
absolutely
you, me, your wife, and my wife. We can just keep it simple like that too. But anyway, glad you all are joining us on this fine Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Got your cup of coffee, hopefully. Talk a little Chargers, little Rams. We're going to do a little Julio Jones talk, hence Steven's name today. Gotta love the offseason rumors, but hey, maybe have some legs. So we'll get into that. Talk some positional battles for both the Rams and Chargers. And then we're going to do some rookie competitions, some drafted guys by each team who we think will have the better season. But let's start with Julio. I'll just kick it to you. I feel like as the day went on, what are we, Saturday? So when did this actually like kind of break? Was it Thursday? Wednesday?
Thursday, yeah.
Thursday. So I feel like as the day went on Thursday and day went on yesterday, I just kind of saw your tweets getting more and more like, I'm not saying talking yourself into it, but kind of like, yeah, I want it to happen. Okay, now I really want it to happen. Now this needs to happen. Yeah, you were just getting into it.
Yeah. It was a fun ride, right? Because the reason that it started, for those who missed it, right, is Jeff Schultz, who writes for The Athletic and covers the Falcons. He wrote an article about why the Falcons are still trying to trade Julio Jones. Mm-hmm. And he didn't report that the Chargers are interested. It wasn't like, the Chargers are in on Julio Jones kind of thing, but he mentioned that the Falcons would have kind of like criteria of where they would trade Julio Jones, which makes sense, right? Like we've seen, in the past, players get treated a certain way once they get to a certain level within an organization. And obviously Julio is at that point. He's arguably, a top 6, 7, 8 wide receiver in NFL history. He's an amazing player.
Oh yeah.
And
we saw that with Matt Stafford.
Yeah. And so these teams will want to do right by those kind of players. And so, the criteria that he listed out, it was kind of like, a contending team, a young team with a young quarterback who could potentially take that next step. They need a missing piece, as you see my article right here. Mm-hmm. And so he put the Chargers under that list, which makes a lot of sense, given the state of the franchise with Justin Herbert and the offensive weapons that they could have with Julio Jones. So on paper, it makes a lot of sense. And, you know, like the idea of having Keenan Allen and Julio Jones on the same field at the same time, like it's just so tempting. And initially, like the reason that I got more progressive for me, because I was like, oh, he makes $23 million this year. It's like 20 next year, and then like 18 after that. And I was like, the Chargers can't really afford that. And then I happened to interact with Jason from Over the Cap, and he was like, well, the way that the trade would work is that whoever trades for him would take on $15 million this year and then $11 million each of the next 2 years with a potential out after 2022.
Yeah.
So you could potentially get Julio Jones for $36 or $27 million over the next 2 or 3 years. And in my opinion, even if you get B plus semi-healthy version of Julio Jones, I think you'd make that trade. And, you know, people talk about Julio being kind of injury prone. He gets banged up, and so does Mike Williams. Like, if you look at skill sets, health history, it's very similar between the two. Obviously, Julio is much more well-rounded, but if you can get 14 games of Julio Jones versus 14 games of Mike Williams, I know which one I'm taking. And I do think that if they traded for Julio Jones, that Mike Williams would be shipped elsewhere. I think, frankly, he would probably request a trade.
You think he'd be a part of this trade?
No, I don't, because the Falcons have like $100,000 in cap space. They can't even sign their rookies right now, which I think not enough people realize. And so they can't take on players unless it's someone on a super cheap rookie deal. Like if they want Joshua Kelly, then so be it, because they do need a running back. But
wouldn't, and sorry to cut you off, but so if Jason was saying the Chargers would take on 15 million of Julio's, and that's what Mike Williams taken, so that wouldn't work out. Just to be like an even swap almost. You don't think?
It could, like on paper that would work, yes, but like I said, they don't even have enough money to sign their rookies right now. They can't sign Kyle Pitts right now because they don't have the space. Yeah. And so like they've got to do some kind of restructuring in the next week or so before trading Julio Jones to make that happen.
Yeah.
And some people, you know, in that article, Jeff Schultz mentioned that they could restructure Grady Jarrett. They should have restructured Matt Ryan a long time ago.
I don't know why they haven't yet.
So
I mean, new GMs, that makes things kind of, you know, he's still, not that he doesn't know what he's doing, but those are all not his contracts. So he's got to figure out how to, do you think though do you think Julio will not be a Falcon at the start of this year?
I do. I think he's going to be traded. It doesn't make sense to me why because Schultz implied that the Falcons are rebuilding and that they think that they're a rebuilding team.
Yeah.
And so to me, like if I knew that my team was rebuilding at number 4, I would have taken a quarterback.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, why take Pitts if you're rebuilding?
And so like when they took Pitts, I was like, okay, so they're all in on this season. Maybe, you know, try and get Arthur Smith into the playoffs in year 1, which is something I wrote about recently as well. And the NFC is relatively wide open, and so is the NFC South. Like the Saints are not going to be the same old Saints. I don't think they'll miss the playoffs, but you know, they're certainly not the same old Saints. And so, to me, when they took Kyle Pitts, I was like, okay, like they're going to keep Julio and they're going to have this awesome offense and just run people out the door with, you know, Calvin Ridley and Hayden Hurst. Like that's a crazy offense.
Yeah.
And so to me, I don't understand necessarily why they are going to trade him, but everything that we're hearing is that he's going to get traded. They need to free up some cap space. Maybe they would be interested in acquiring like a young defensive player, because that defense outside of Grady Jarrett and Dante Fowler is pretty bad.
Yeah.
So maybe someone like a Jerry Tillery or something like that. But I do think that Julio is going to get traded somewhere.
Yeah. The timing is weird because you would think they'd want to, whoever this got out by, or if it's just now, you know, that guy at The Athletic just, you know, saying just what he thinks, and it just kind of took fire. But you would think they'd want this to come out before the draft, because they could have gotten maybe some more draft capital and gave them more ammo, or to get back in the first if they wanted, or, you know, get some defensive players. So strange that it's now, but it seems like just from everything we're hearing that he will no longer be with the Falcons, and of his, I can't remember if the thing said of his desired place. And then I saw someone tweet yesterday who was like,
it was like a Patriots beat writer.
Yeah, Patriots beat writers. I don't know how much stock it holds, but basically saying like his agent is literally working with the Chargers to like make it happen.
Yeah,
I don't really
like this. Like, no shade, like, but this guy saying that would be like me saying that. Like, there's not much difference in my opinion between him saying that and like if I threw that shit out there, like it'd be the same kind of thing.
Yeah, and it could be true, but that's what agents are reaching out to all teams to make a deal. So there's really no like insight there. Like if your player wants to trade, agents are reaching out to teams to try to make a deal. So it's not like Tom Telesco reaching out to the agent. It's the agent putting that in the fruition. Hey, my player would like to come here. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, and like it certainly could be true. Like he could prefer to play with the Chargers. I know if I were in his situation, that's who I would prefer. Like there was also another report that said that he would be really interested in playing with Cam Newton. And I'm like, Cam Newton at this point of his career or Justin Herbert? That's tough. Yeah. New England or Los Angeles? I don't know. So it could be true, but until someone with a verified check mark next to their name says that, I'm not believing it. Murray was not the worst linebacker last season. That is a ridiculous statement. I'm sorry, but Kenneth Murray was a stud last year.
Had some rookie woes, but I think he had a bright young linebacker that you do not give to a. I love Julio Jones, but you don't give to a middle aging receiver. I saw other people, since we cover the Rams here too. I saw there's more Rams bloggers that were talking about scenarios that he could be with the Rams. I'll just quickly put that to bed because the Rams have no money and that's not happening. So,
$0.
So unless they're trading away one of their marquee players that are making big money, then that's not happening. So, and the Rams are set at wide receiver. Julio, no doubt, no matter where Julio go, he's going to make that receiver room better. But the Rams 1 through 4, they have exactly the system they want in place with the types of receivers with Trees and Cooper Kupp, and now drafting Van Jefferson, and then getting Deshaun Jackson and Tutu Atwell for their speed guys.
That's like a really good room.
They have who they want. So I know it's the off season, so it's just everyone's looking for content, but I would say 0, probably -% chance the Rams even pick up the phone because it's money they just don't have the need.
Sorry about that. It's going to be interesting because I feel like the two teams that would be fitting the criteria that the Falcons would have, because they're not going to trade him within the NFC either. So to me, like it's going to be really interesting because the two teams that I think make the most sense, obviously the Chargers and then the Colts. And both of those teams are teams that, hoard draft picks, hoard cap space like nobody's business. And so trading for Julio is, I don't want to call it a risky move, but it's like I'm pushing all my chips in for the next 2 years kind of move. And frankly, both teams don't necessarily need him, right? Like the Colts are fine at receiver with Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton if he can stay healthy.
Got a good young.
Same with the Chargers with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. But I think the Colts, I think they'll probably win their division. But if they really want to challenge the Chiefs and the Bills and that kind of tier of team, and the Browns, so I think will make that jump, then they're a couple pieces away, I think. And so them trading for Julio, I think puts them in that same tier. And I think the Chargers trading for Julio puts them into that playoff contender tier, which, I've been kind of preaching patience this season because the Chargers do have some depth issues. They have some holes across the roster still that I'm kind of uncomfortable with. But if they traded for Julio, like the expectations now are that they're a playoff team. And so I think that's the interesting thing, is because both of those teams are kind of missing a couple pieces to really vault themselves into that conversation. But like, just imagine like really quickly, week 3, Chargers in Kansas City, and you have Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Julio Jones versus Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. That game would be like the Rams-Chiefs game from a couple years ago. It'd be like 45-40, just amazing kind of fireworks. And so I think it makes so much sense for the Chargers to go and do this. I just don't think that they're going to, because like I said, traditionally, they've hoarded draft picks and hoarded cap space. But man, that would be so much fun.
Yeah. And right now the Chargers are about 20 million in cap space. I don't think that includes all their draft picks. I think that needs to come off still. So they're probably sitting more around 14 or so, I'm guessing. But if they could somehow pull this off, and it does not include Mike Williams, that room would 100 unequivocally be the best room in football. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Julio Jones. And then you have the guys they drafted last year, plus the guys they drafted this year, Josh Palmer. Yeah. I mean, talk about giving your quarterback the tools to win with that offensive line and now those weapons. Yeah. That would be a historic turnaround from last year.
Well, and there's been a lot of people who have been talking about, like, you know, could Justin Herbert regress this season? Could, you know, his second coordinator and second system in as many years have some negative effects on him? Well, what's the best way to counteract that? You stack up that wide receiver room, the tight end room, which we're going to talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But if they're able to keep Mike Williams, man, that would be so much fun. I think, you know, the Chargers getting Julio Jones tanks Mike Williams' long-term value for the Chargers or for anyone else.
Yeah.
So I would have to think that at that point he would request a trade, and, you know, frankly, I wouldn't blame him.
Yeah, we'll see. But I'd love to see it too. I don't know if I can't remember a blockbuster trade the Chargers making in recent memory. Maybe they have. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and it's just not really their MO. So
I mean, when they traded for Trey Turner last year, I was like shocked.
Yeah, that was pretty blockbuster. Yeah.
For the Chargers, that's blockbuster. And so it's an interesting dynamic, right? Because we have Rams Chargers here. And the Rams they don't have a first round pick for like 20 years because they've traded all of them away.
They are Mr. Blockbuster.
Yeah. And then you have the Chargers who are like, no, we don't trade anything ever. They were literally the only team in the draft that didn't trade a pick.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's just funny, the difference in philosophy between the two teams.
I know. Last thing about this, covering the Rams, the one thing that terrifies me, and I haven't looked at their cap situation, but I do. Could you see a world where the Niners make a run at him? Obviously, Kyle Shanahan being his former offensive coordinator, they have like good receivers, but they don't have in my opinion, a true like possession guy that can take over a game. They have a lot, I don't want to call them bad receivers, but they have a lot of like skill guys, but they don't have a Julio Jones type player, where at least the Chargers have a Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
I would hate to see the Niners make a run and go get Julio Jones and have to face him twice a year.
Well, we know that the NFL is all about connections, and like he's mentioned with Kyle Shanahan. So I think they could. Again, they would have to do some restructuring somewhere, because I think they have like $17 or $16 million in cap space, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll pull it up right now. They're about 17 right now, but again, I don't think that includes rookies. So
so they're probably around 11 or 12. So they would have to do some restructuring somewhere. They could still trade Jimmy Garoppolo, which I think they should probably do at this point. But, I think that would be, as a casual fan, watching an offense led by Kyle Shanahan with George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Julio Jones. Like, man, that would be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, it'll look like that 18 Falcons team, really. Their offense had a lot of firepower, and that's what they'll look like similarly. Okay. So last thing, put a button on it. Julio Jones, will he be a Charger at the start of training camp? I'll just say he will not be a Ram, so I'll get that out of there. I put LA in the title.
I think he's going to be traded. I'm not going to say yes or no, because that's such a tough thing to say, but I'll give the Chargers a 20% chance of pulling off this trade.
Okay. All right. That's some. I like it. Okay. Let's move on here. Let's talk about some positional battles. We'll start with the Chargers, and then we'll end with the Rams. So obviously we're still, what are we now? Towards the end of May. Crazy. This month is just flying by. But, mini camp, or Chargers had rookie mini camp. Rams had OTAs, full team OTAs. So weird how different teams kind of do different things at this time of year. But, so we're still a solid month and a half, almost 2 months out from training camp. So, we got a ways, but we'll see these guys on the field, I think, a couple times for more OTAs. So it's hard to say, but, at this point, what are some position battles you're looking at for this Charger squad?
Well, I think the obvious ones that people are talking about are like that wide receiver 5. because of Josh Palmer. I think he's kind of entrenched in that wide receiver 3 role, at least on the roster, on the depth chart, because they're not going to cut him. So I think you've got Jalen Guy and Tyron Johnson. I think one of those two is safe. I do think they could be, one of them could be on the chopping block. And then, you've got Joe Reed, KJ Hill, and a bunch of other, undrafted free agents. They signed Austin Prohl earlier this week. I don't think that's really anything, to be honest with you.
Yeah, maybe it's
yeah, so it does kind of seem that KJ Hill is kind of the odd man out, but maybe they value, his route running ability more than they value Joe Reed's, kind of positional versatility, so to speak. So I think that wide receiver 5 or 6, if they carry 6 again this year, I think that'll be interesting. And then everybody's kind of talking about the running back 3 battle between Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree. But the one that I'm super interested in that people are not really talking about is the tight end 2 battle, because I think Trey Mckitty is going to be the blocking tight end, the special teams guy. And obviously you have Jared Cook as the tight end 1. And I think people kind of have Donald Parham penciled in as that tight end 2, but I don't really agree with that. I don't think we can really say with 100% confidence that Donald Parham is a surefire bet to be on this roster. And Steven Anderson was terrible on special teams last year, which is why they took Trey Mckitty. But he also showed some really intriguing signs as a pass catcher last year, particularly after the catch. And so I think if you want, obviously, Parham is a massive human being. He's a red zone threat, and he is nimble, right? But I think having Jared Cook, Steven Anderson, and Trey Mckitty would give you 3 really different tight ends and give you some options, because I do think Steven Anderson is a little quicker, a little more nuanced in his route running, a little better after the catch than Donald Parham is. And so I think people have kind of penciled in Donald Parham already, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Steven Anderson still has a legitimate chance to make this roster over Donald Parham.
Yeah, and another guy, I know he's undrafted, but there's always going to be an undrafted free agent that's going to make this squad. And Hunter Kampmoyer out of Oregon, Justin Herbert's former teammate, is another guy that I would definitely want to watch in camp. And I think he has a real legitimate shot to make this roster, just because I know they're deep on tight end, but they don't have like that true, like you just said, they don't have a true guy at number 2 yet. Like it's really open for interpretation, and he's a tremendous blocker. There's some great plays you can find out there of him opening holes up, blocking. I think he wore like number 48 in college, which is, great number for a tight end.
Former defensive end too.
Yeah. So, and again, not a huge pass catcher, but it does have good hands. I think he, in last year had like over 150 yards receiving, a couple touchdowns. So, serviceable in that area. So he's definitely an undrafted guy that I think could certainly make this squad, and not necessarily be the tight end 2, but would jockey for it, of course, depending how many tight ends this team wants to keep.
I actually have a sneaky suspicion that they brought him in to be a fullback. And I know, like, people who know our podcast pretty well, we've always kind of joked about, Gabe Neighbors, because we really liked Bobby Hawley last year. And so people, we were. And so people are probably going to think that I just hate Gabe Neighbors, which is not the case. I don't really care anymore. But the one thing that I will say about Gabe Neighbors is that he was pretty bad on special teams himself.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that the Chargers would come into this season with this big emphasis on special teams and not bring in competition for Neighbors. And so they haven't necessarily said where Kampmoyer is going to be playing. But they didn't really say where Neighbors was going to be playing either. He was announced as a tight end last year when he was signed. So Kampmoyer, I think, could fill that fullback H-back kind of role and certainly challenge Neighbors, at least on special teams.
No, 100%. And some of his blocks last year, if you were from like the H-back position, so he could certainly do it. And that's kind of the new norm nowadays, since the fullback is such an unutilized position, is a lot of tight ends kind of play that fullback pseudo role. So I think that's a very fair spot for him. So, any other big position battles you want to talk about, or should we move on to the Rams?
The safety 3 position is one that I have my eye on too, because you have Alohi Gilman and Mark Webb, right now, at least that's the case, unless they add, another veteran. But we've kind of talked about the Brandon Staley defense is going to have 3 safeties on the field more often than not. And so Mark Webb or Alohi Gilman, one of those two is going to play quite a bit this season. And so
I know that scares you.
It doesn't necessarily scare me, but I'm not like thrilled about it either.
Yeah.
And so I do wish that they would add a veteran there. I even bringing in like a guy like Jalen Watkins back, I think would kind of ease my concerns a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But one of Mark Webb and Alohi Gilman is going to play a lot. And so I'm curious to see how that pans out, because Mark Webb is a little taller, longer, more athletic, but I mean, Alohi Gilman's not a rookie, and he's a little more physical, which is weird because he's smaller. But so I'm curious to see how that position battle pans out as well.
Yeah, that the whole secondary would be a big one to see how it all shakes out. Like we have it penciled in how we think. I mean, the assumption is Asante Samuel will be, the starter outside, outside, and hopefully Chris Harris will be in the slot. But we'll see how it all shakes out. Just with Brandon's, we talk about it so much with Staley's scheme and system. Guys move around so much too that it's gonna look different on every play. So they're gonna get a lot of guys involved. But I think those are the big ones: safety, tight end, like you mentioned, RB3. Those are kind of the biggest ones to watch. Maybe quarterback too. Easton Stick.
I don't think Easton Stick has a chance, man. Like we haven't seen him, and it's unfortunate because he's one of the players that was really most affected by not having a preseason last year.
Yeah, we'll see.
Because 3 games. He needs those reps more than anyone else, especially as a quarterback. But the last one I'll mention here for the Chargers is edge 3, because they brought in Kyler Fackrell. I think he'll probably start out as being that rotational pass rusher. But I mean, they did Chris Rumph too, and we all know that most teams use 4 edge rushers, throughout the game. And so I'm curious to see how that one pans out. Not necessarily in training camp, because I do think Chris Rumph has some developing to do. But I'm curious to see how that one pans out throughout the season. If Chris Rumph is able to kind of take some strides throughout the year. Yeah,
it'll be certainly interesting and seeing where exactly all these guys fit, going kind of from a 4-3 now to a pseudo 3-4. So it'll be interesting to see. So you just gave a weird look there. Did you see something you didn't like?
No, nothing you said. The comments going on here about the linebacker battle. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't know how anyone could say that Drew Tranquill is better than Kenneth Murray right now, because Drew Tranquill has started like 4 games in his career. So I love the guy. I think he's going to be a breakout player. Yeah. But I mean, Kenneth Murray is like the perfect modern NFL linebacker. Like, sure, he struggled some this year, but I think he's going to have a massive, massive season for the Chargers this year.
Yeah, I think so too, especially in this system. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Rams camp battles or positional battles all through the offseason. I think the Rams are fairly set at starter for the most part. The biggest one right now, or the biggest 2 that I'll get into when it comes to starter, is the center position. Obviously, everyone's going to want to talk about that. Didn't draft anyone. Is it going to be? Yeah. Yeah, you're on Chargers Twitter mostly. If you were on Rams Twitter, there was a meltdown every round that went by, and that offensive lineman not taken. It was, boy, that flaming like Elmo guy. That's what was going on every single time. Is it going to be Brian Allen, who they drafted? A lot of Rams fans probably hate that, but the Rams seem to still like him, and finally he's healthy again. Austin Corbett, is he going to slide back over and play center, which I think is probably the more likely? I know in OTAs there was a lot of the investigation, people looking at like photos, because there's no media allowed at Rams OTAs, but there were photos taken that got posted, and the photos of the unit number 1 had Austin Corbett at center. So everyone's like, okay, I guess that means Austin Corbett's the center. So as of now, it looks like Corbett is the center for the Rams, or at least that's how they have it playing out. But that could just be that one picture. I mean, who knows if they're rotating, if it's, Coleman Shelton, I think, who had a very good career at Washington, walked on obviously with the Rams, but he has potential too. So that'll be definitely, I think, the biggest offensive position to watch. There's going to be some jockeying at receiver, but obviously we want to know who's the guy snapping to Matthew Stafford. But I think as of right now, it will be it's Austin Corbett, and then you'll have both, I think, David Edwards and Bobby Evans beside him at guard, and then obviously Havenstein and Whitworth at your tackle positions. So I think that's how it sits right now, but that's why they have training camp. We'll see what happens.
So why did they switch to Austin Blythe last year? Like, because if they're thinking long term, like in terms of Austin Corbett, if he's a center, why weren't they not playing him at center last year, and why were they playing Austin Blythe instead?
Well, I think Blythe was a true center, whereas Corbett had more versatility. He played some guard and then played center in Cleveland when they traded for him, but then he like struggled at that position, so they moved him over. So that's why a lot of people are uneasy, because you're like, oh, well, yeah, he played center, but he didn't play very well at center. So they slid him over, and he played much better at guard, and it just seemed like the continuity was there. And that's, I think, why the concern is, just because he didn't look great when he did, but he was forced to due to injury. But then, their names are too similar. Austin Blythe then really stepped up and played well. So he found a home there at guard. So yeah, but I know Edwards and Jones, who were drafted as tackles, have played really well at guard. So I think they feel good about both of them being in the guard spots. And then it'll just be kind of a baptism by fire, but you hope Corbett's the guy.
Well, it seems like the Rams are kind of employing that approach of, we just want our 5 best guys out there, and we'll figure out the positions later, which that's not super common in the NFL. That's definitely more of a college thing. Because ideally you want players in the NFL to have their positions defined, but I don't know enough about Corbett or Brian Allen to really say who I think would be the guy. But do you think it's Corbett like 100%, or does Brian Allen have a chance to really push him in training camp?
I think Brian Allen has a much bigger chance than fans think. I think fans, I'm trying to think of a comparable guy on the Chargers, but Brian Allen is a guy that fans just do not like, just because he was given it basically.
So he's Trey Pipkins.
There you go. Kind of like that. John Sullivan, John Sullivan left the Rams after the Super Bowl run, who was like a great center. And then the keys were given to Brian Allen after he was drafted out of Michigan State. And he was pretty awful when he first started. And then he got hurt. And then he's been hurt basically ever since. So we really saw such a limited, small sample size, but that taste in everyone's mouth was so bad that fear of him coming back. But I think the Rams really feel good about him. And I'm curious, I don't know, I'm not doing any reporting on this, but with the leaving of Aaron Kromer, their offensive line coach, we really, not a lot was made of why that happened. And he hasn't been picked up yet by another team, one of the better offensive line coaches. So I'm curious if maybe he had a different idea of what he wanted than what Sean McVay wanted. Yeah. Maybe they have different belief in guys. Maybe that had to do with, Austin Corbett moving over. McVay said, no, I want him to be our center. So I don't know if there was something with that and why they brought in Kevin Carberry as their new offensive line coach, just because McVay had a different belief. Maybe he believes in Brian Allen and Aaron Kromer didn't. But I do think he has a better shot than fans probably want him to have. But as of right now, Corbett is the guy, I think.
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see how their run scheme at least changes this year, because, in the past they've been so heavily focused on wide zone. Yeah. And, Stanford, like, they did that occasionally, but, Stanford's a power football team for the most part. It's a lot of duo, a lot of counters, a lot of halfback dives and stuff like that. And so I'm curious to see if that changes at all for the Rams going forward.
Yeah, I would think there'd be some new wrinkles. It'll still be the McVay influence of what they've been doing, but I think there'll definitely be some different wrinkles in there. And now, Eric Henderson is the new run game coordinator. So see what he kind of implements and whatnot, or what, schemes he wants to kind of do from the defensive side of it. So, I think there'll be a couple changes, but the other position I do want to touch on is inside linebacker, because I think that's definitely the biggest outside of center. I would think
lots of question marks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I would think, and everyone I've talked to who will be the starters will be Trayvon Howard, who missed all of last year due to injury, and then Ernest Jones, they just drafted. And last year, their starters were Micah Kaiser and kind of a rotation of Troy Reeder and Kenny Young. So it could look completely different. We could see.
Is Kaiser gone?
No, they're all still there. I just think that Trayvon Howard gives them the athleticism that they want at backer. Out of the group, he's probably the most athletic, can go more side and sideline, kind of a not nearly as good, but is similar to a Kenneth Murray type. And then Ernest Jones is your run stuffer. Obviously, they just spent, a high pick on him, and, a pretty sure tackler. He's going to have, he has some troubles getting off blocks. So that's going to need to be improved on. But he's a much more sure tackler than, Micah Kaiser, who had some games where he looked fantastic with like 15, 16 tackles. And in some games he had like 5 missed tackles in a game. So, and Troy Reeder gives you some good things, but that I think will be the position where we could see a guy who started last year, whether it's Kaiser, Reeder, or Young, end up being a casualty this year and cut. And so I think that's kind of the biggest between those 5, that rotation, and who ends up being slotted in at starting is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they use Jones, because it's not, who the kind of linebacker that they have typically had in the Rams. He reminds me a lot of Denzel Perryman, a little less athletic, but in terms of his physical ability to just come downhill, hit people in the mouth, and make you feel his presence. When I was really studying into this linebacker class, there weren't a lot of linebackers like him. Like, this linebacker class was a lot of coverage guys, a lot of space and chase guys who are a little more finesse, not necessarily going to take on blockers, take on running backs in the hole effectively. And so Ernest Jones is that kind of player. So I'm curious to see how that one pans out. And then I'm also selfishly curious to see how the safety position with the Rams pans out. Obviously, with my guy Terrell Burgess, they got to replace John Johnson, who had a monster season for Brandon Staley last year. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how the safety position shakes out, because Terrell was hurt last year, and so was Caleb Rabb, right?
Yeah, they both had their injuries, and I talked to Terrell, was blessed to have him on the show recently. Awesome guy, super cool guy. From I know you're a fan of his, but ankle feels great. He said, he's close to 100%, just keeping rehabbing, so he'll be 100% good to go by the time camp comes around. I know Taylor Rapp's injury wasn't nearly as serious. He just kind of missed some spotty games, so he'll be back. But I think just because of what they each bring, and again, we're talking base package. I think all 3 are going to be on the field a lot. But if you look at just base, Fuller and Burgess, I think are your 2 starting safeties, and Rapp is more your, in the box, not necessarily playing the nickel, but he's the guy out there when you have multiple DBs out there. I just think he's a better, box safety, and Burgess and Fuller give you more versatility to do kind of it all. So I think that's, health permitting, which, he said he's 100%. I think it'll be Burgess and Fuller, and then you have Rapp on the back end. And then obviously they have a lot of depth at that position that they can, move guys around if needed to. But those are your big 3, and all 3 are going to play a lot. So I think they're excited about all of them.
I'm so excited to see how Terrell pans out this year, because it's weird, that 2019 Utah defense put every single member of the secondary into the NFL.
Yeah.
And Terrell was only a starter for 1 year, and he legitimately might have been like the best player on the field for them at times. And so he really changed Utah's outlook on defense, because they're kind of, under Kyle Whittingham, they've been a traditional team. And so they hadn't really moved players around all that much. And typically the strong safety was just a strong safety. But Terrell, when they had him on the field, they put him in the slot. They put him at free safety. They put him at strong safety. They put him at linebacker.
Yeah.
And he I didn't even know who he was, heading into the season. And then he comes out and has this monster season for them. And, he can really do it all. He can play the ball really well. I don't think he ran a super fast 40 time, but he plays faster than he runs. Great instincts, cover really, really well. And so if he's the guy that's replacing John Johnson, I think Rams fans should be very confident in them not really losing a step, because I think Terrell Burgess is going to be a stud for them.
Oh yeah. And that's why they took him, because they knew basically with the way they run their team that John Johnson was not going to be back, because they couldn't afford him. And so they knew they were going to need to find his counterpiece, or his protege, if you will. And that's why they took Terrell Burgess in the 3rd round. And that's who they expect him to be. And they were kind of pleasantly surprised with how good Jordan Fuller panned out to be after getting him in the 6th round. That was just a cherry on top. But yeah, those are your 2 guys. And then Rapp will be a rotational guy. That is kind of your thumper, if you will, and comes down.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I think they're going to be, obviously John Johnson's a phenomenal player. I think he ended up in a great situation going to Cleveland.
Oh yeah.
Good for him. But I think the Rams are going to be just fine with who they got there. So quickly, before we get into these rookie battles. Of course, we're like, let's do a quick 30-minute show. Here we are at 40 minutes. We'll try to roll through these quick. But last one to mention with the Rams is that nickel or CB3 spot, because obviously you have Jalen Ramsey and I think Darius Williams are your locked in CB1, CB2. Obviously Jalen Ramsey, but I think Darius Williams has earned the respect of being called CB2. But is it going to be, David Long, who's a guy that they've been excited about since they drafted him out of Michigan, but really hasn't been able to get on the field, partly because Darius Williams played so well last year. I mean, he was not expected to be that guy last year. David Long was kind of expected to be, moving on up, him with Troy Hill. So do we see David Long this year? Do we see the draft pick Robert Rochelle? They have a lot of depth at that position as well, but not a lot of, known guys. So a lot of, walk-ons and stuff of that nature. So I think that'll be another big camp battle. Essentially, Robert Rochelle and David Long of who really steps up. Both athletic, both similar styles, but who gets more playing time. So that'll be a fun one too.
Where do they stand with Williams in the sense of getting him an extension? Is he going to play the season on the option, or is he going to get an extension?
So the Rams typically, they get these extensions done like pre-training camp. So like in July, I don't know if the deadline, there's so many different deadlines, but like they usually get done before like July 15th, I feel like. And I know they want to. Obviously, you don't give a guy a first-round tender without the intention of extending him. So I would expect an extension to happen before training camp starts. Obviously, if that happens too, they can move some money around and free up more cap space if they need to add anyone at later times. So that would be my expectation. But as of now, I haven't heard anything.
Well, he's certainly deserved it. I think he's an awesome player, and he's switching back to number 11, right?
Yeah. That's all weird. All the number switches. I've been like, oh, that's gonna be cool. But seeing a corner with number 11 is gonna be hard to get used to.
The weirdest number change that I have seen so far is Patrick Queen going from 48 to number 6.
I think. Yeah,
and he wore number 8 in high school and college. So I'm like, why wouldn't you just stay at 48? Or like, I don't know. That one was weird. Yeah.
Like Kenneth Murray with 9. Love it.
Makes sense.
That's his college number, but yeah. So that'll be weird. But yeah, seeing an 11 picture if the Rams play wherever Julio Jones end up and you got 11 on 11, that'll look funny. Okay, let's do some, we'll do these quick. So we don't spend too much time on them, but we want to talk about some rookies for the Rams and Chargers who will have the better rookie season, not career. Just keep it short and sweet. Better rookie season. Tutu Atwell, Rams 2nd-round pick. Josh Palmer, Chargers 3rd-round pick. Obviously, very different receivers. We're not going to compare that. They're there to do very different things. But when the season's said and done, who do you think we will look back and say that guy had the better rookie year?
I think it's going to be Tutu Atwell. I think the Rams have a clear plan for him. Like, he doesn't need an injury in front of him to really excel as a rookie. Whereas Josh Palmer, I think he was drafted to be insurance for Mike Williams. I think he'll play a lot, but the Chargers have so many weapons to get the ball to. And I don't know about Joe Lombardi yet. I know that Sean McVay is a very creative offensive mind, who I've a lot more confidence in him involving Tutu more often, more early. So I'm going to say Tutu as a rookie.
I agree. As a rookie, yeah. I think Josh Palmer can potentially be wide receiver 3 on this Chargers team. Not saying he will, but he has that potential.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, he could get a lot of looks. But I just think it'll take some time to really get him into that offense. And Tutu's success isn't, and I think Josh Palmer's success is like a based on the style of receiver he is. It's like it's a Mike Williams type jump ball guy, but could also be kind of a possession guy. So you need some production there, I guess I would say. Not have to, but you need a little bit more. Tutu's success is like, hey, if you get us 1 catch, 50 yards and a touchdown, that's why we brought you here.
That's great, yeah.
You get in the season with 25 catches for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns, and that's a slam rookie season. So
well, like at minimum, Tutu can be that gadget player that they haven't really had for a while. So I think that's how they'll use him. As SD Fishing commented that, you pinned it. I love that thing. That's hilarious. If Keenan and Mike had a baby, that's who Josh Palmer is. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, and we had him on the show too. Awesome kid. So super excited to see how he does this season. Canadian A.
Apparently, Canadians don't say A as much as we all think. So,
according to him, and then I talked to my buddy Sosa, who's also he lives in Toronto, and he was like, "Dude, I say A every other sentence." So maybe some, I don't know, maybe some misinformation there.
Well, to be fair, Josh did like pseudo grew up in Florida, so
yeah,
he's probably gotten that out of him. Yeah,
I mean, he's been gone for a solid 5 years or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it was just that his neighborhood didn't say it. I don't know. But okay, two very different tight ends here. I don't even know if Jacob Harris is considered a tight end, but he was drafted with the TE next to his name. He has the size. They'll be used very differently. So this is kind of a hard one. But hey, they say technically the same position. So Trey Mckitty versus Jacob Harris, better rookie year. And this doesn't have to be statistically because like you saying McKitty's going to do a very different role, and that could still stem success though.
Well, I don't think either really is going to play a lot in terms of getting a lot of targets, right? Because the Rams tight end room, you've said that they really like Bryson Hopkins. They obviously have Tyler Higbee, who I think is probably in that middle tier tight end range, who will be, heavily involved for them. But Trey McKitty is going to play a lot as a blocker and as a special teamer. So I think by sheer playing snaps, I think it's Trey McKitty here.
Yeah, I agree. I think McKitty won't have the stats at the end of the season to say, wow, what a great pick, but he'll be heavily involved in the run game. He'll be on the field a lot. I think he'll end up turning into potentially their number one blocking tight end just because they don't have anyone else at least ahead of him. Jacob Harris will be, his reps on offense will be similar to like a Donald Parham. He'll be in on red zone, jump ball situations. And other than that, he'll be a special teams guy. He could work his way into more. So we could see statistically at the end of the year with Jacob Harris with, more touchdowns than McKitty. McKitty might not have any, and Jacob Harris could have, 4 or 5 or 6 just because that's his situationally. But when it comes to pure utilization, production, I think McKitty will have the more important year, I guess I could say.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right, last one here. And again, this probably is not fair considering who you are, but same position, Robert Rochelle, who I think has potential to actually be a really good corner in this league, but he's going to need some time. And Asante Samuel Jr., who's basically, the next protege of the great corner in this game, I think.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see how they use Asante Samuel Jr. because last year, Brandon Staley kind of used Darius Williams and Troy Hill kind of as interchangeable pieces between the slot and outside. And I think he has that same kind of capability with Asante and Chris Harris. So it's an obvious answer. It has to be Asante. I think he's going to play way more than Robert Rochelle is, who I think will get on the field just because, he's a corner in the NFL. They drafted him relatively high. He'll get on the field. But Asante Samuel is going to play as much as humanly possible. And, I think Asante probably gets 4 or 5 interceptions, recovers a couple fumbles. And I'm just super excited about the Chargers adding him.
Yeah. Yeah, ASJ is going to be the day one starter. He'll be, hopefully that lockdown guy that they've been wanting. Hopefully with, Derwin healthy, them both on the field. It's going to be so fun to watch. With Chris Harris Jr., I think he's going to have a big, big year this year as well. Robert Rochelle, I think, is potentially could have a very good career. It's just going to take time to get out there. He's so athletic that he will get on the field at some point. Obviously, he'll play special teams. And I think he'll break into that, whether it's nickel spot, like I said earlier, if he beats out David Long Jr. So I think we'll see him sooner than later. But I can't say right now he's gonna have a better season when Asante Samuel's like literally slated as CB1 or CB2 behind Mike Davis. So
there's no doubt that Asante is a starter, whereas Rochelle will have to earn that in training camp.
Yeah. And if he does, then hey, all bets are off. You never know. Maybe he has a Darius Williams type season. So
we'll have to revisit this conversation if Rochelle does end up being a starter.
Yeah. Here we go. Before we wrap up, how many pass breakups do you think Asante is going to have this year?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So,
because he had more pass breakups than like interceptions, right, in college. That was kind of his.
Yeah, that's pretty common for cornerbacks. I want to say Michael Davis had like 12 pass breakups last year. I think Asante could get up into the teens, so maybe like 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one pass breakup a game kind of thing.
Yeah. Respectable. Very respectable.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Well, hey, anything else you want to add before we end this live I don't want to call it therapy session, but yeah, off-season therapy.
No, man, it's hilarious because every time we plan these things, we're like, oh, let's do 30 minutes, and it ends up being now 50. Or there was one time we were like, let's do 45, and it ended up being like an hour and 5. So
yeah,
we just love talking ball, obviously, and so I'm really excited about these kind of conversations, and we'll obviously keep an eye on the Julio Jones stuff.
Yep.
It's post June 1st where the Falcons will save the most money. But a team could theoretically agree to terms on a trade before then. So I do expect that to be resolved in the next, couple weeks here. So it's going to be exciting to see where he ends up.
Yeah. The NFL, man, always giving us content no matter what.
I know. We were kind of joking in our group chat, like, man, there's like not a whole lot to talk about right now. And then it's like, all right, here's a Julio Jones to the Chargers.
Yeah.
We were like, thank you, Jesus. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you. There's always something. And somehow our LA teams, both either the Rams or Chargers lately, have always been involved. So it just 100%. Works out great. Can you imagine being like I don't know, like a Bills? Bills, but they're just never in the news. Never
imagine being a Lions beat writer right now, man. Like, oh, that would be miserable. Nothing
ever. So thank you for that. Thank you all for tuning in. This is LAFB.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. You can find myself, Ryan Dyer, at LAFB on Twitter. Find Stephen I. Haglin on Twitter. He does the Guilty as Charged podcast, one of the best Chargers podcasts out there, and obviously does all the writing for the Chargers for the LA Football Network. Make sure to check us out at LAFB Network. So, all right, brother, appreciate you. Shoot him straight today. Have fun out there. I'm jealous.
Thank you. Yes, I am going golfing again. I can't wait. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, we'll post your score next week. How you doing?
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you guys later next week.
All right, everyone. Take care. Enjoy your Saturday.